Okay, it's a couple minutes in, so I think let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. So my name is Steph. I'm from Edrolo, and as part of my role, I've been supporting our very first group of schools at 100 schools across Australia who have been trialling the Year 7 Edrolo resource this year. So thank you all for being part of it and for your feedback along the way as well. It's been really valuable. So, as you know, today's focus is around data and differentiation, which is something that we've been hearing from a lot of teachers that they have as a priority and something that they'd really like a little bit more support with. So, I thought we could cover today. I'll give a quick overview of what's actually in the Year 7 Maths resource, the physical and the digital resource, and then we'll dive into talking about where to find student progress data that can help you with your teaching at different levels. So I'll touch on within individual lessons, across topics and question set data, and also some practical ideas of what to do with that information and how to support your students. And then at the end, there'll be a section where I'll ask for you to just take a moment to think about what of today will be most valuable, most useful for you with your classes, and to think about what you might take away from this session. So I'll just give a quick overview of Edrolo. I'm sure you're all familiar with that now, but Edrolo partners with over 1,100 schools across Australia. We provide curriculum-aligned physical and digital resources in the senior year, so year 11 and 12. And as I mentioned, this is our very first year of working with Year 7 students and teachers. So thinking about the Year 7 maths textbook specifically, it's really been designed with these three guiding principles in mind. So the focus on conceptual understanding rather than rote learning has been core to how we've built the resource. We know that rote learning rules, it can be in one ear, out the other when it comes to having to apply that knowledge and build on it in future years. Unless students have that really deep conceptual understanding, it can be hard to build from. The second point there is around building confidence in independent learning. So really empowering students to take ownership of their own learning, giving them a lot of support so that, of course, it can help with the teaching in the classroom, but it's also that extra support outside of class time when students can actually get the help they need to get unstuck and to work out how things work and what they need to tackle next in terms of their maths learning. And this final point here is around meeting every student at their point of need. So again, and this is why we're here today to talk about differentiation. The thing we've been hearing most commonly from maths teachers around Australia is the students are coming in with a really wide range of abilities, and we've designed the resource with that in mind. So with all that said, let's dive in and talk a little bit about what's in the resource. So within the physical maths book, of course, you've got the really concise theory and the key ideas. We've got worked examples, skill building worksheets as well. We've got a wide bank of questions. So you would have seen they range from fluency, problem solving, reasoning. You'll notice some extra spicy ones for a bit of extension there, and some remember this, tying it all back to previous concepts in Year 7 across the range of topics. And on the right there, you've got detailed solutions. So every single question has a worked solution with a lot of detail and unpacking of how to approach it. And if students are feeling stuck, there's a lot of different ways into the maths to help them. The physical book ties in with the online, of course. So in the online platform, as you may have seen already, you've got the textbook video theory and worked examples there for students to access. As I mentioned, every question has a solution. So all of those questions and solutions live online as well. And the benefit of that is that as a teacher, you're able to see your student progress as they go through. So we'll be talking a lot about the different views that are available to you as a teacher. And as I said, some different ways that you could take that information and use it to support your students. So when we think about differentiation, such a huge range of ability and confidence levels as well among Year 7 students, our focus today will really be to touch on both how to identify student needs for the whole class and at an individual level as well, and then how to cater for those needs using Edrolo. So we're talking about data and we're talking about learning activities. So I'll take you through a few different data views, as I said, and I'm really keen for you to have a think about and share, if you like, which ideas resonate most with you from what we cover. So to start things off, I think let's dive into the individual lesson level. So as you know, with Edrolo, as students are going through and watching the video theory, you're able to see which videos they've watched, how they've gone with the quiz questions, and how they've rated their understanding. So what I might do is actually just jump over to the platform and show you how to access that. Let me just get out of my slides here. There we are. Okay, so if you can see my screen, we've still got the Year 7 maths page, a study planner page where everything lives. For every single lesson, you've got the class progress button here, and you can see for my class here, they've had a lot of progress in this first lesson as it's turning green, and you'll notice it's sort of orange and red. They've done little bits and pieces of the following lessons. So if I dive into the class progress grid, it looks like this. And as I mentioned, I can see all my students down the left-hand side, and I can see exactly which videos they've watched and how they've gone in the quizzes. The great thing about this view, when you're thinking about how your class is progressing with a lesson, is you can actually sort this grid. So for example, you can make everything jump to the top here, see who's watched the most. And likewise, if you click it again, you can see perhaps who hasn't done the homework that you may have set, and see that quite easily. You can also do the same thing with the quizzes. So you can see at a glance who's actually done the work but maybe struggled a little bit with some of those questions. For all of the grids I'll show you, you can look really at the individual level and see who in my class might need that little bit of extra support, and likewise who's flying ahead. And you can also see across the class what trends there might be. So if I was looking at this, what's standing out to me is that this first quiz question, quite a lot of the class has gotten that wrong. And I can click into that and see what that question is. And that might be something that I use to plan my next lesson. So if we think about, I guess, applying this type of data, I've just pulled out a couple of things that might be food for thought for you as you think about this for your class. For looking at common mistakes across the class, one thing I'll point out that might be helpful for you is you can click this anonymize student names. And of course, my pretend students here have already got anonymized names, but in your class, you would have the real names, click anonymize, and they'll show up with amusing animal names for you. So this way you can actually see and show the class progress without singling anyone out if you're wanting to share this with your students. So one idea might be to actually anonymize that grid, show this grid to your class as a way of showing them actually question one, if you struggled with that, that's quite a common area where across the class that people needed some more support. We're all in the same boat there. It also might increase, I guess, student buy-in to the idea of you're using their results that you can see online in order to better support them rather than as a way of sort of monitoring them. It's there to see where the gaps are and where you can help them. So what some teachers are doing once they've got that view and they're thinking about common mistakes across the class is to walk through the relevant video theory or the multiple choice question as a class activity, particularly if there are elements where a lot of people seem to be struggling. I might just jump back to the slides and I'll make sure that shows up for you. There we go. Thinking about at an individual level, perhaps you've got some students who are particularly struggling and you've identified that in this class progress grid for a lesson, some ideas that might be of interest, you could, of course, direct them to read the textbook theory, in particular, the introduction and the key ideas. So you can see on the screen some of these key ideas, they're quite concise. And if you're finding that you're teaching from elements of the textbook, but you're not necessarily getting students to read the theory at the start of a lesson, it might be a good place to direct them once they've had a go at these questions and you're realizing they've still got a couple of gaps. So use it more as a revision tool or a consolidation tool. The other idea at this point for students who are struggling is have them review the worked examples and the student practice questions, and also have them complete the understanding worksheet. So you'll see we've deliberately put worked examples and the understanding worksheet before they get to the fluency question set. So before they dive into the pure maths, they've actually got these easier points of entry really into the concepts, and they're also a great place to come back to if you're finding that individual students are struggling a little bit, because they do start at that lower level. So a lot of our understanding worksheets really are accessible for down to around a grade 4-5 maths level ability. So a great thing to know about, to come back to if you're noticing in the data that students might be having some trouble. Thinking about students who are particularly confident in a lesson as well, you'll be able to see that from the progress grids. You might instead have them skip the understanding worksheet, head straight into fluency questions. And if they're very confident, the fluency questions themselves are differentiated into mild, medium, and spicy. And you could say, if you're really confident, head straight to the spicy questions. Just a little sort of advanced tip as well, if you think this might be helpful for your class, is the very last question in the understanding worksheet and the last question in the fluency, they address a particular misconception, and that you can almost use this like an exit ticket. So if students are saying I'm confident, or you're seeing in the video theory data grids that they're confident, have them do that final question of the worksheet or the fluency. If they get it right and they're feeling good, then they can move on to the higher order questions. So similar to the class progress grid, we've also got a topic theory grid. And I will just quickly show you how to find this as well. So again, if we're in our study planner page, and you can see I've got it highlighted here, topic progress there at the top. So that will show you progress across an entire chapter rather than just for a particular lesson, which is what we looked at earlier. So again, I've brought up my topic grid here for my class. Just looking at chapter 1 in maths. And this way you can see across all of the different lessons, what are the trends that are starting to emerge for the whole class and then at the individual level as well. Here we go, let me jump back here. So again, if we think first of all around the entire class and common knowledge gaps, and you might see, for example, in this one, perhaps 1B is standing out as, you know, a lot of students have done the work, but they're getting about half wrong, or a lot of questions incorrect there for 1B. It might be worth doing a revision lesson on those key knowledge gaps, and you can really easily see that, you know, if I was going to focus anywhere from chapter 1, where would it be most beneficial for my class? And you can use this data grid as a starting point there. One idea is to actually do some type of revision before you set the chapter review, which we've got available online and in the book. So it might give students just that extra little bit of time to catch up in these common problem areas before you actually get them to apply their knowledge in the review quiz. Individuals struggling with an entire topic. So I've got a couple of ideas if you've got students in this boat and you're seeing that in the data grid. One thing to note is that every lesson in a chapter builds on the previous one. So if you're finding that students are struggling across the entire topic, it might be a good starting point to have them actually revisit that first lesson and really embed those concepts, review the key ideas, review the worked examples and the understanding worksheet, which again is that easier jumping off point from the first lesson before you have them revise anything further. On the flip side, thinking about individuals who might be excelling with an entire topic, some things to push your top end. You can see on the screen here, one idea is this extended application. We've got a question set. It comes in the book just before the chapter review. And if you've already moved on to book 2 of the Edrolo resource, you'll actually find these online going forward. So the great thing about the extended application is it actually is combining skills and concepts from across the chapter and having students combine them and apply them in new ways. So this is fantastic for students who are confident with the content in each lesson and across the topic. And it's that extra step of pushing them further to make sure that they fully get the concepts. And again, this works really well just before you set the chapter review. It's a really great chance for them to apply it in a lower stakes setting. Likewise, thinking about individuals that you're wanting to push that little bit further, the extra spicy questions that occur for each lesson in the chapter, they might be great if they haven't completed them as they've gone through. You could actually set them as revision and for extension as well. But remember, these questions, again, are in each lesson and they tie into multiple topic areas. So extra spicy and remember this might be great for your top end to come back to and push themselves that bit further. The other main part in terms of data and finding this information and seeing the student needs is the question sets. And if you've used Edrolo, you may have seen this if you've used our textbook resources before. This may be new for some people if you have only used the video theory on Edrolo before. So I really wanted to, excuse me, take the time to explain this. Excuse me. So first of all, let me just show you where to find these questions and the data grid that you can see on the screen. And then again, we'll work through some ideas for once you've got that information, ideas for using that with your class. Okay, so let me jump again. This is the study planner page. And as you can see, next to every single lesson here, that's the video content. And then right on the right-hand side, you've got these question sets. So I've clicked into one here. Now, as a teacher, when you first click into the question sets, it's going to bring up this data grid for you. So it's going to show you your student progress once they've completed these. I'll just point out though that if you are wanting to view those questions yourself, you absolutely can. You just need to click into this little button here. It's like a little bullet point drop-down menu where it says all questions. And it gives you this other view where you can see every single question. See here, understanding worksheet, moves down to fluency, etc. It's got all the different sections there. While I'm here, I will just point out this share link button. So if you click that, you can actually share these questions directly with your class. Of course, you can also just say, do the question set for 1A, and they'll easily be able to find that in their study planner, but that's up to you. I won't go into detail about all of the different types of questions and what they look like here. That's definitely something we'd be able to support you with if anyone's wanting more training in that. But I just wanted to focus today on once you've actually set those questions and students have completed them, you've got this wonderful data. And I'll explain a little bit about how to interpret the data, and then we'll have a think about some ways to use that. So you might be wondering what the green squares and the triangles represent. Essentially, what we've really focused on here is student understanding. So there are two ways to look at this. You can look, first of all, at students who have got questions correct and incorrect. And the best way to see that is the little triangles that are either red or green at the bottom of these squares here. So, for example, I can see that locust manatee here, it's got green triangles across all of the understanding worksheet questions. So got those all correct, but hit the first question in fluency, and the red triangle down the bottom there shows me that they got that incorrect. As well as seeing correct and incorrect answers, we've asked students, once they've completed the question, we've given them a worked solution, including a video solution for them. And then we've said, do you understand the concept, or do you need more help? And so then their rating has flowed to the color of the square. So for example, locust here, got it incorrect, watched the video, saw the explanation. We asked them, do you understand it now? And they said, no, I need more help. And that's why the box is red. Whereas if we look over here at question 6H, similar situation, they got the question incorrect. They watched the video from Edrolo, they saw the explanation, and we've asked them, do you understand? And they've said, yes, I get it now. And that's why the box is green. So this is the key thing to understand about the question set data, is it gives you these two different lenses to be able to look at the individual level and the class. What was their initial response? Was it right or wrong? And probably more importantly, where are they sitting now? Do they get it, or do they need more help? So knowing that, you can then decide what you want to do with this information. So if I jump back over here, and we're looking at question set data grids. There we are. You might, for example, spot there's students who are struggling in particular areas. That's really easy to see in a grid like this. So for example, clam, goldfish over here, got 9 out of 17. Lots of red boxes where they don't understand the question. You can, of course, also look at the class level, similar to the other grids we've talked about, where you might see question 13 is a common problem area, and you might decide to focus on that. So let's turn to thinking about what we do with this information and ideas to support you on Edrolo. I think the question set, it's a great piece of formative assessment. Essentially, you've got it for each lesson, and then of course you've got the chapter review at the end of the chapter. One main thing to point out is that each section builds on the previous one. So if you're noticing a trend where you've got the whole class or individual students struggling with reasoning questions, for example, go back to problem solving, which is the section before that. If you're noticing a lot of mistakes in problem solving, make sure that fluency is really well understood. So each section will build on the previous one. And likewise, the previous section is a great starting point if you're noticing common problem areas to direct students back to and make sure they've got that knowledge embedded. The other thing that I'll say is that when you've got this student progress data and you can see this really clearly, hopefully everything that Edrolo is doing is helping to give you a little bit of time back as a teacher to provide direct support to students, because you're not having to do so much in terms of in the class to try to cater to every student, because there are lots of ways that we're supporting those students without you needing to be there and answering their direct questions every single step of the way. There's a lot that supports students to be individual, confident learners. But that means that the time you do get back, you can focus in really direct ways where it's most needed. So I've mentioned a little bit about looking at common problem areas, and of course, looking at individual students who may need that bit of support. One other idea that may resonate with some people, the interesting thing about seeing someone who perhaps got it wrong and then worked through it and now understands it, that might be a wonderful opportunity to ask that student to explain to the class, how did you do it? You watched the solution, it clicked in your brain. What was that click moment for you? Can you explain it to other people who are probably on that same journey of falling into a trap and still trying to find out how the maths can make sense for them? that's just one idea of how you might use a grid like that to support students. Now, I'm conscious of time. We've got a few more minutes. I would love to just share a couple of bonus tips. Had some wonderful consultation with our content team, who are all in-house, and they've built this content really, really deliberately. And they had some wonderful ideas that they would love for us to share with you. So I might just pick a couple of these and make sure we've got some time at the end if anyone wants to share what's resonated most with you as we've gone through as well. So the first one is, we've talked briefly about the questions being differentiated into mild, medium, and spicy. So of course that's built in. You can easily set that for particular students or have them choose their own path through the questions. One idea is, as you can see on the screen now, in the fluency questions, they're actually tagged with the relevant worked example that they build on. So if you're setting the worked examples for students to go through, and you can say to them, if you struggled with the first worked example question, the fluency questions that are tagged with worked example 1, you might do the mild version of question 6. But on the flip side, you might have really had no issue at all with worked example 2 and you're confident. For question 7, which builds on worked example 2, you might push yourself into the medium or the spicy. So of course, use those mild, medium, spicy questions as a whole if that's what works, but you can get more granular with that and have students choose the path that suits them based on the type of question that they've covered in the worked examples. We've also had, we've got a couple of schools where internet's not reliable. Not all students have devices, and they're looking for ways to see how their students are going without having every student perhaps doing all of the questions online in every class. Just to reassure you that, of course, rely on your old trusty formative assessment methods, exit tickets, quick polls, hands up, red, yellow, green cards. One other idea to throw into the mix is you might have, if you've got reliable internet access at the school itself, you might have, the teacher. You as a teacher, show the video lesson to the class, and it might be a multiple choice question or even an extension question, and you have students, if it's multiple choice, go to each corner of the room. Do you think it's A, B, C, D? Physically get them doing that, get them engaged in it, and then have a class discussion based on what the correct answer is, for example. So there are ways to sort of use the Edrolo materials as a teacher to make it engaging in the class and get the sense of how students are tracking without necessarily having them, input their answers on their own individual laptop computer, for example. Okay, we've covered a lot in this session. I hope that there have been parts that maybe new ideas or are resonating with you for your class. What I'm going to do is I'll just click over to the next slide. But I wanted to have this up on the screen just as a little reminder of the types of student data we've had a look at and some of the ideas that we've covered. And we've got a couple more minutes. I'm able to stay if other people are. If you have to leave, absolutely no problem. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're right on 11:30. But if there are people on the call, if you want to pop into the chat, any questions, I'd be happy to stick around for a few minutes and answer them. I'm just going to stop that share for a moment. Just give you a couple of minutes if you've got any questions or any ideas that you want to pop into the chat box. Okay, no problem. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining today. I hope you've got something out of this. And of course, if you need any help from Edrolo, please don't hesitate to get in touch with your Learning Innovation Associate for your school, or our support team is help@edrolo.com.au. And we're here to help you as you go through. So thanks so much. Bye.